2021. I'm of two minds about it. Alright, we're rolling. What's up, everybody? It's Pat here at the new and improved Ground Zero Salem. Over the Christmas break, I got some new equipment. You can see there's some nice LEDs going in the background. Got a new camera. Not quite sure how I feel about it yet. There's more definition, but it's got this sort of Glennie Friedman Beastie Boys video fisheye kind of thing. So what you want? So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I might get a different one. Or I might go back to the phone camera on my new phone because it's really, really nice. Anyways, enough about that. I came to do a top 10 of 2021 video. Just as a challenge to myself, I'm kind of over the whole like being too cool for school about doing something like this at the end of the year. I think it's just there was a glut of these maybe around the time I started doing the whole metal review YouTube community thing, and I just got tired of seeing them, I guess, or it just seemed like obligatory to do them, so of course naturally I wanted to like knee-jerk away from it. But I kind of looked back at the stuff that I bought this year, and I realized there were a lot of really, really great releases, and it would be a fun challenge almost to go through and keep myself to a top 10. It was bordering on physically painful paring this down to only 10 releases across all genres. I'm not really limiting myself to just metal or hardcore, although pretty much everything that I'm into falls into those two categories usually, so it wasn't too big of a deal. I decided that I was gonna do a top 10, and then probably Friday or sometime over the weekend, time permitting, hopefully, I'm just gonna do a huge year in review of all the stuff outside of that, all the kind of runners-up and also-rans for me. There's a lot of great stuff that came out this year in the 2 or 3 genres that I listen to, so I want to talk about that stuff too. But I figured it would be kind of fun and challenging to do a ranked 10-to-1 favorite records of the year sort of thing. So thanks for joining me one more time here, Ground Zero Salem. 2021, of course, was a hell of a year for me. I moved, a new spot. Spent a good couple of months unpacking this place. I've just been training at a couple of different, basically the healthcare equivalent of freelance work. A couple of different hospitals I'm working at right now. Starting to get myself all set up with knowing the ropes at these several places so I can start making videos again. Before I get into the list, we're listening to Languid, A Paranoid Wretch. What else does that say? In Society's Games. This is very new to me. I just got this in the mail last week, or the week before. I got a ton of stuff that I ordered. I went a little hog wild with just the last couple releases that I saw from the year. A lot of more stuff I'll be talking about, a lot of punk and metal. I heard a lot of good stuff about this. This was on a lot of lists. Felix Havoc spoke high praise of this. This is a Canadian kind of Kang punk, D-beat sort of band. Anything involving like a skeletal figure wearing a Viking helmet is going to at least sound a little bit like Anti-Cymex. This doesn't disappoint. It's got that sort of like behind the beat, sort of D-beat, kind of crushing, heavy, Swedish hardcore sound. Looks like they're from Canada. It said something about Edmonton hardcore in the thanks list. So really great stuff. I've just been like spinning it continually while trying to get my audio and video where I want it, which I've been kind of anal retentive about. I've been listening to this like maybe 2 or 3 times before hitting record right now. All right, so, oh yeah, and I also haven't really ranked these. I'm going to be very arbitrary with my 10 through 1, but let's grab my pile here. So I'll go with, for number 10, I'm going to say Inoculations, Celestial Putridity. Celestial Putridity by Inoculation. On Maggot Stomp this year. I just love this when I got it, which was way earlier in 2021. I think it was winter or maybe spring. And I didn't look into it, but I believe this band is American or maybe Canadian. But it's just that old style of technical, almost Floridian death metal. It's well produced, but it's kind of gnarly in the guitar tone. It brings to mind, to me, Primo Morbid Angel, Nocturnus, even Hellwitch, stuff like that. It isn't super flashy technical, but it's very catchy and gets dizzying at points. Hell, even like if you like the Necrovore demos, like this might be for you. kind of carrying on that theme of the sci-fi death metal stuff that's been hot the past couple of years, which I'm not mad at. It's not my favorite thing in the world, but whatever. Maggot Stomp, another example of a Maggot Stomp band that might kind of like venture outside of what you'd expect from that label with the, you know, the brutal grooves and the kind of mortician worship that they're known for. I'd say half their roster doesn't really fit that description anymore, you know? Then I'll go with number 9, Tony Tears, The Atlantean Afterlife, Living Beyond. This is probably the most cohesive thing Tony's done yet. Came out on Pariah Child, my buddy's label there in Northern Ireland. I really like this record a lot. I spun it a ton when I was making the Pariah Child video. I'll leave a link for that in the description. And, you know, it's got all those elements that he's kind of fused into his own brand of Italo Doom that I like so much. A lot of, like, almost Tangerine Dreamish kind of electronic moments, but also lots of heavy sort of 70s proto-metal and a little bit of, like, death rock almost. Everything that he's done is super heavy and super impressive and very atmospheric and just rad. Love Tony Tears. You know, if you're a fan of Death SS and Mortuary Drape and all that stuff, it doesn't sound exactly like those bands, but it's got that same sort of thing that a lot of the Italian bands have. For number 8, I'm going to go for the Canal Irreal, self-titled here. This came out on Beach Impediment this year. Sold out real fast. I think it's gotten repressed already, but this features Martine, Chicago hardcore legend, vocalist for Los Crudos and Limp Wrist. This is kind of taking his token, really, such a powerful vocalist. I think he's right up there with like Lou Collar and John Brannon in terms of just like really commanding, sort of barking vocals. He's got just a great hardcore voice, but combined with a little bit more of like still very hardcore, but kind of pulling in some influence from post-punk and death rock approach to musicianship. It's got the urgency of hardcore, the hard-hitting elements. There's some pretty like strong, like meaty riffs, but there's also that watery kind of chorus pedal thing going on with the guitar and the real driving bass lines, you know, almost reminding me of, sounding to me like a bit of like a Southern death cult kind of influence weaving its way through the music. It's really, really great. It's so good. It's so catchy. Personal and political lyrics in English and Spanish. Great stuff. You know, I had high hopes. Wasn't let down at all. Didn't expect to be from Martine's stuff. And for number 7, this is a really cool record. I can't wait to hear what these folks do with a proper full length. This is compiling a couple of demos. This is a band called Poison Ruin from Philly. This is neat. It came with this like OB strip. Really cool aesthetic, really cool approach to music. I like how it looks like a lot of modern Oi records. I feel like every modern Oi record, it's kind of like the D-Beat or Anti-Cymix worship bands with the helmeted lich or whatever it is. All these modern Oi bands have these sort of like knights, like these medieval Templar-looking knights. The Templars being the first band to do it, like wielding swords on horseback and stuff. I like how it's kind of flipped on its head. You've got a yin-yang symbol and a peace symbol for the shields on that. I thought that was really cool. And this does kind of have a little bit of that, like, rebirth of, like, French and Italian Oi in it a bit. But also, like, there's some synthy dungeon synth kind of moments and a lot of, like, sort of, I don't know, like, post-punk. I'm thinking sort of like Wire and Joy Division, kind of. It's very much its own thing. It's got sort of, like, these kind of like dreamy sounding vocals to it. It's a really, really cool band. Lots of a fresh melding of styles going on there. I just ordered like a live tape and I think a long sleeve from them just because I like them so much. I love me some merch. It's not hard to keep me from buying merch, especially these days. Alright, what was that? So that was 7. Hard to keep all this straight. I'm like, wait, which one was that again? So number 6, Dead Heat's World at War, came out on Triple B this year. This is just crossover supremacy, man. Like, it's hard to impress me with crossover. I'll generally like it if it's a combination of, like, 80s hardcore and 80s metal. Like, it's my bread and butter. My favorite bands are, like, The Accused and Crumbsuckers. Like, I love that stuff. Modern bands, you know, I got a little burnt out in the era of Municipal Waste and all that kind of stuff. It seemed like a trope for a while, but in the past 6-7 years, with bands like Foreseen coming out, there's been some really strong ones. Obviously, Power Trip, of course. Dead Heat are way up there. I have always kind of, since I first heard them a couple of years ago, likened them to the West Coast equivalent of their buddies who they did a split with, Mind Force. Because they kind of took all these influences from a lot of West Coast stuff, brought it into a modern context, kind of did something new with it. Their last record, very, very strong suicidal and kind of suicidal records influence in general. A lot of like Venice kind of stuff going on. Not just suicidal, but Beowulf and Excel. I mean, all those bands kind of had a similar kind of sound and influenced each other. Dead Heat, I want to say, takes all that, but you can hear a certain kind of technicality that also belongs to some East Coast bands like the second Crumbsuckers record and Prong and stuff like that. There's a good, like, almost ballady touch on a few songs, that kind of heavy emotion thing that Mike Muir did. There's a good influence of just straight up non-metal, fast West Coast hardcore and punk stuff. They do it really, really well. Very, very adept players. They're shredders. And I like their last one, but I really, really like this one. Triple B 2021. Not sure if this is on a cool color or not. Let's find out. Yes, it's on a purple. We love it. All right, number 5. If I don't screw up this ranking, I'll be really stoked. Number 5. I'm going to say Dungeon Serpent. I talked about this a bit. Talked about it briefly on that stream with Ken and Marty and Ben. This really knocked my socks off when I first heard it. Listened to it incessantly. Gonna spin it again now that I'm talking about it. I'm like, shit, I gotta listen to that again. This and the Eye of Purgatory CD, which I'll talk about on the next update, were this cool kind of rebirth of mellow death, but like real dirty mellow death. Like the really early Edge of Sanity stuff, and maybe some other shit like Migas and I don't know, like Maze of Torment, like all this stuff that, and also the Greek bands, like taking melodicism past that Stockholm stuff into stuff that was a little bit sweeter sounding, but also very, very fucking evil. Great growled vocals, very like powerful sort of death metal vocals on this. It's just kind of taking things in a different direction than a lot of the typical, for lack of a better term, OSDM. And this band hails from, we'll go with hails from Canada. And this is great. I mean, it's an EP. I wish it were longer, but there's a really good instrumental, really good longer song on here. Fantastic. Great, great record. Let me go flip that over. All right, so for number 4, this is just an EP, but this is one of those bands I feel really, really thrives on 7 inches. But I wouldn't be surprised if they blew me away with a great short full length at some point, because both of their 7 inches, including this one that came out this year, kick butts, kick all the butt cheeks all over the world. This is Social Capital by Electric Chair. Came out on Iron Lung. Looks like they were if I'm not mistaken, Pittsburgh band. It's members of the Beta Boys. Oh, actually, no. Beta Boys are Seattle. Seattle band. This is great hardcore. It reminds me of a time in the early 2000s where bands like Fucked Up and bands like Career Suicide, MD Peterson's Army, even going back to as far as the late 90s, come to think of it, MD Peterson's Army from Sweden, ETA from Sweden, all these bands were taking classic hardcore, a lot of strong American hardcore influence with a lot of those folks from Circle Jerks and Angry Samoans and The Germs, and maybe stuff that was a little bit more aggro like DRI, and kind of taking all of it, putting it in a modern context. Again, I use that example a lot, but you can do a worship of stuff and try to make it sound like it was recorded during a certain time, or you can record it really well, and I think it's harder to pull off the latter, really. And that's what this does. It's ranging influences from all over the world, primarily from the 80s, but maybe they're drawing some influence from those sort of like return to the roots hardcore from the 99s and the 99s, from the late 90s and the 2000s as well. And the recording sounds great. It's super energetic. It's a really, really fun listen. You know, it sounds like something that would go well at like the original Havoc Fest or Pointless Fest in Philly, you know, one of those kind of deals. Just fun, scrappy, super energy levels through the roof kind of hardcore punk stuff. Great band. In at number 3, and it probably would be number 1 if I had more time to spend with it, but I have spun this a bunch since I got a copy in the mail. I was bummed because I didn't think I was going to get one of these copies, or this on any format for that matter, until after February, because that's when my order is supposed to come in, of Worms full length, which I'm sure is hot on everyone's lips right now, which is good. Foreverglade, I've been corresponding with Phantom Slaughter for years now, and every release that they do improves, and all the success that they're seeing is well earned. This kind of expands on the sound explored on their last one. Gloomlord, you know, it's got that disembowelment sort of thing going on that Gloomlord had, with the kind of shimmering guitars and the echoiness, that sort of expansive soundscape that they kind of bring forth, and that creepy vibe is very swamp-like in my opinion. But there's a little bit more cohesiveness, catchiness, memorability on this. I feel like there's better songcraft overall, kind of drawing a bit more influence from the Peaceville bands. Anathema has been name-checked by several people, and I think that's apt. I think that's fair. There's a little bit more of a touch of like almost like a slightly gothic sort of thing going on with a lot of the tracks, but it's infinitely catchy, especially with this kind of death doom, almost lurching towards a funeral doom kind of sound. They really make it like fun to listen to, which is rad. And also, I left it downstairs. I want to show it off, but Phantom was kind enough to send me a promo copy of the tape too, which is awesome. So thank you, my friend. Then we've got the last two here. Coming in at number 2, just a perfect punk record, pretty much. Chubby and the Gang, the Mutts Nuts. This is a ripper, man. This is so good. Their last one was great. This one, slightly better. That first one was awesome too. I'm not sure. This came out on Partisan Records. Everything, it's just a total package. The layout, which kind of deceptive, you know. This could be like some Shakedown Street, like Grateful Dead type of shit, you know. Looks like it came out of my parents' record collection, but it's street rock and roll, essentially. You know, very, very strong kind of oi influence without being straight up oi. Lots of like Chuck Berry kind of style riffs, those kind of hammer-on, whatever they're called. I'm not a guitarist. Those kind of Chuck Berry style riffs. You could even say like very, very, very early Motorhead and like Rose Tattoo probably have an influence. And they've got a couple ballads on here that are almost kind of like doo-wop-ish, that are great. They kind of break up the album nice. It's awesome. It's super, super good. Pick it up if you like punk rock. It's going to be one of the best punk rock records you've heard this year. I swear to you. Finally, Album of the Year for Pat at Ground Zero Salem. Bang to Rights by Heavy Sentence. Kind of a deceptive cover. Very cool cover. I love it. To me, it's kind of reminds me of like Terry Gilliam cartoons meets a first-person dungeon crawler from like the 80s meets you know, Cause for Alarm, Agnostic Front, Sean Taggart art. I love it, but that's not, you know, a lot of people who I showed this to said it would sound like, is that crossover? You know, is that like kind of New York hardcore kind of stuff? The artist I want to say is a UK dude who's done art for bands like that, but I didn't look into it. This is UK, but it's like new wave of British heavy metal, worship at its finest. Nothing slick or too melodic. It sounds a lot like the 2 Diano records that Maiden did, Diano era Maiden, with Lemmy singing. A few other little influences sprinkled throughout. You might hear maybe some Tank in there, some Priest. It's all relative, but it's like super motor-driven, twin guitar, Iron Maiden worship. It's perfect. It's perfect. Every song is catchy and fun as hell to listen to. The guy definitely has a gruff vocal style that sounds a lot like Lemmy, but it's not a direct evocation. You know, it's not a direct, like, carbon copy. He's kind of doing his own thing a bit, which is good. It's awesome. I highly recommend this, and there's been a bunch of other releases. I've heard of Dying Victims Productions for a while. I might have one or two records that came out on that label, but there's a lot of stuff that came out on that label this year that's quite good, and I'll be talking about some of that next update when I just do a general roundup of everything that I've liked this year that I happen to pick up. But that is it for now. I hope you enjoyed my top 10 of 2021 that I just kind of slapped together here, and I don't know. Yeah, that's it. Have a great year, rest of the year, everyone. I hope New Year's was kind to everyone. Be careful out there. Things are getting gnarly. Yeah, I don't know. I never know how to end these. Happy New Year.